आवासो ब्रह्मर्षे विचलीव गता तपः मैत्रेय उवाच सैवं संविदिते भात्र मन्माथो मैथितेन्द्रिय जाग्रहवास ब्रह्मर्षे विचलीव गता तपः Maitreya Uvacha, Maitreya said, Sa, see, evam, thus, samvidite, in spite of being informed, Bhatraha, by her husband, Manmatha, by Cupid, Unmatita, being pressed, Indriya, senses, Jagraha, caught hold of, Vasaha, clothing, Brahma Rishehe, of the great Brahmana sage, Brishali, public prostitute, Eva, like, Gata Tarpa, without shame. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Maitreya said, Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was praised by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Purport. The difference between a married wife and a public prostitute is that one is restrained in sex life by the rules and regulations of the scriptures, whereas the other is unrestricted in sex life and is conducted solely by the strong sex urge. Although very enlightened, Kashyapa, the great sage, became a victim of his prostitute wife. Such is the strong force of material energy. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manavistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupaha Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sijita Padakamanam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathapitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishaka Vitamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namastate Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataru Bhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayavacha Patitanam Pavane Bhayo Vaishnave Bhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Maitreya Uvacha Saivam Samvite Bhatraha Man Mato Maitirendriyaha Jagraha Vasu Brahmarshe Vrichaliva Gatatrapaha. Maitreya said, Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Yeah. So we see in this chapter where Vijay Maharaj is further inquiring about the appearance of Lord Varaha, that how did Lord Varaha appear, right? And Maitreya Muni, starts, no, just before this chapter, we see the appearance of Lord Varaha, and then uh, the duel between Lord Varaha and Hiranyaksha. So this is the going back. How did this pastor manifest? How did this demon come into being? And Maitreya Muni is then explaining in this chapter that now how deity, right, Kashyapa Muni had married many wives, of which mainly there are 13 daughters of um, um, Daksha, who were married to Kashyapa Muni, of which Diti was one of them. And Sri approaches Kashyapa for union in the evening when Kashyapa Muni was in meditation. When Kashyapa Muni was in meditation, she approaches, giving reasons. Cupid had overcome her. She was filled with lusty desires. And she didn't have a son. She wanted a son. There were other co-wives who had son, and she didn't have, so that's why she wanted it. And and she had chosen Kashyapa Muni way before her marriage also. So she was, attracted to Kashyapa Muni. So various reasons are being given, which we covered earlier. And how does Kashyapa Muni handle that? Kashyapa Muni, initially glorifies Diti. That a wife is considered as Ardhangini. And it mentions that you are the source of Trivargika Siddhi. A wife helps to cross the material ocean. Right? We see Dharma, Artha, Kama. The man is involved with. But moksha, liberation, comes where a man being attached to sense gratification, a wife helps in making him detached from sense gratification, and thus becomes a source of liberation for the man. So she helps. She's half of the man's body, helps in conquering the senses, and the wife handles so much task for the husband that whatever she does can't be repaid by the husband. Right. And then we see Kashyapa Muni saying that, definitely I will satisfy your desires. You have these desires, definitely I will satisfy your desires. But be patient. And then he explains why this time is inauspicious. Right? This is Sandhya Kal. Time is inauspicious. During this time, the great personality, Lord Shiva, roams around with his followers, and his followers are ghostly. Many of his followers are ghostly for their deliverance also. And Uh, he also explains that another reason he gives that others will criticize me if I satisfy your desire this time. So be patient about that. And then mentions about uh, Shiva, Lord Shiva's greatness, and how if uh, progeny is done during this particular time, it will lead to uh, demons taking birth. Right? It will lead to not good progeny. But Diti is not satisfied. Right? And it's mentioned that when a person is conquered by lusty desires, right, they lose discrimination. And intelligent words does not penetrate the lusty desires, right? And the result is, even after hearing all this, Diti snatches the clothes of her husband, Kashyapa Muni, and impels him to no, uh, uh, have union with her at this inauspicious time. So that's where, in these words, Srila Prabhupada nicely mentions about Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was praised by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. So strong word is used here, where it is compared to the public prostitute, that a wife, otherwise, uh, a married wife, is restrained in sex life by the rules and regulations of the scriptures. Right? While a public prostitute is unrestrained, right? Unrestrained, unlimited sense gratification. They have no consideration of the time, the place, and we see it so rampant in current world. Nobody really, we see people have any even knowledge of a good time or a bad time. Right? They don't even have a knowledge of good time or bad time. Thus resulting in the increase of population of daityas. Right? Thus resulting in the increase of population of daityas, and we see no sanskars are there in the upbringing of, first of all, in even begetting a child, because there are no sanskars followed while begetting a child. Right? When the parents do not follow proper sanskar, like garbhadan sanskar, other sanskars, and does not have control over time, what time to make, what time not to have union, and it becomes unrestrained, then ultimately it will lead to, when Bhagavad Gita in the first chapter says, unwanted progeny, where so many daityas will be born of daitya consciousness, demon consciousness, rather than higher spiritual consciousness. So that's what sex life does. In the Yajnavalkya, one of the great rishi, sage, He mentions in the rules of celibacy, karmana manasa vachaha sarvavastesu sarvada sarvatra maituna tyago brahmacharyam prachakshate. Right. A vow of brahmacharya is meant to help one completely abstain from sex indulgence in work, words, and mind at all times, under all circumstances, and in all places. Right. Srila Prabhupada, in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where it talks about dhyana yoga and this Ashtanga yoga process, right? He mentioned that the first necessity in the Ashtanga yoga process is one has to follow brahmacharya life. Right. Then they can perform this Ashtanga yoga process nicely. Right. And in that reference, he quotes this. No one can perform correct yoga practice through sex indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught, therefore, from childhood. When one has no knowledge of sex life, children at the age of 5 are sent to the Gurukul or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga, whether it be dhyana yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having a sexual relationship only with his wife, and that also under regulation, is also called a brahmachari. Brahmachari is not only one who follows that ashram brahmachari, that he does not marry, but even in grahastha life, one can follow brahmacharya by abstaining from this sexual indulgence, or it's limited to just having a progeny. Right. Such a restrained householder brahmachari may be accepted in the bhakti school, but in the jnana and dhyana schools do not even admit householder brahmacharis. They require complete abstinence without compromise. In the bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed control sex life because the cult of bhakti yoga is so powerful that one automatically loses sexual attraction being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Vishya vini vartante niraharasya dehina rasa varjam rasopi asya param drishtva nivatate. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of superior taste. Right? Raso varjam rasopi asya, because of superior taste. Other than the devotee, no one has any information of that superior taste. Right. Other than the devotee, no one has information of the superior taste. That's why it's mentioned, one who performs bhakti yoga, vairagya, vidya, nija bhakti yoga. Right. Renunciation automatically comes when performs bhakti. He does not have to externally strive for it. It says bhukti and mukti are doorkeepers of one who follows bhakti. Right. One who follows bhakti, bhukti, sense gratification, mukti, liberation, he does not even care for liberation. Right. So, the household brahmachari's life, that's why the 4 ashramas, when a person follows proper brahmacharya, then he can become a good householder, so that he understands the purpose. This householder life is there, where he has to support these other 3 ashrams, but license is there for sense gratification, but limited, restricted license. Limited, restricted license. So one should not get captivated by the agitation. Now, elsewhere, in the seventh canto of Prahlad Maharaj's instructions, it's mentioned, sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Right. Grihamedi, so-called grihasthas who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although it is actually a source of distress. The Kripanas, who are thus the opposite of the Brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are Dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the sufferings of fools and rascals. Yahi samspasa bhoga dukkha yoni kaunteya. Right. So this itching, it's like compared to like poison ivy. Now, if somebody is infected by poison ivy, it is recommended that it does not go on continuously scratching that area. Otherwise, more he will scratch, more it will spread throughout his body. So similarly, the sexual agitation is like that. The more you scratch, more it will become uncontrolled. More it will become uncontrolled. That's why to follow brahmacharya is very important. Whether in the brahmacharya ashram or in the household ashram, vanaprastha ashram, there is again detachment. So there is no, in all other three ashrams, there is no sexual sex life. In grihastha life, it is limited sense gratification, right? Otherwise, it is graha medi, uncontrolled, right? Right, uncontrolled. Okay. That being said, let's see. In Mahabharata also it says ahara nidra bhaya maithunam. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending is common between animal and human being. So what is so different about human being? Dharmo yesha adhiko vishesha. Right? Dharma. Knowing about higher subject matters, dharma, is a special thing. In only human form of life, he can inquire about dharma. What is my real nature? He can inquire. Right? Otherwise, it just becomes animal life. We're just concerned about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Right? So that's why, again, I mentioned there. Otherwise, no, it's we see, and here again, DT, Mother DT, earlier we see in earlier chapters, it's mentioned about Lord Brahma himself, how he loses discrimination and gets attracted to his own daughter. But these examples are given to make us understand that how in this material world, especially this sexual agitation, leads one to the downfall. Leads one to the downfall. Considered as greatest material pleasure, but it makes one forget about spiritual life. Makes one forget about spiritual life. Makes one forget about, he loses his discrimination. Right. He loses his discrimination. That's why it is very, very important that that proper training is there in proper ashrams of how one can carry out devotional service in that particular ashram, and limit, you know, intermingling of especially opposite gender. Otherwise, it's like when you put butter on a pan of on a pan on fire. Well, what would happen? On a stove, rather, on a pan on a stove, what would happen? It will ignite, right? It will give rise to fire. So we cannot be complacent. Oh, I can sit next to my lion also, no problem. Nothing will happen. No. um, Sitting next to a, so that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would mention that even a wooden doll can attract, can make a person lose his mind and can attract a person. We see instances in Srimad Bhagavatam of Saubari Muni, where he is going in deep meditation under the water so that he is not disturbed. And what happens? He sees two fish mate and he loses, he becomes attracted, and ultimately thinks about, oh, okay, comes out, goes to Mandata, King Mandata, and says, oh, now I want to marry. Right. So that's where this is important. Okay. Are there any discussions on this subject matter? We have 1 minute left.
Hare Krishna, Madhupati Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance. Thanks, Prabhu. You covered a sensitive topic very nicely. I have a comment on my Guru Maharaj's class about this particular topic. So he says the sex desire and how the ashrams relate to the sex desire. So a brahmachari is a person whose hands are tied behind his back. So it basically sex is like an itch, like what you explained. And if you scratch it, it gets even worse. So for a brahmachari, the training and rules regulation is his hands are tied behind by a rope. And when the timing is right, and if he desires, not compulsory, then those ropes can be opened up and he can enter the Grihastha ashram. Grihastha ashram, again, there are regulations. It's, as you mentioned in this particular chapter, it is regarding the timing, because twilight is not a good time. However, it's not just timing, even the purpose. If it's simply for sense gratification, it's just scratching that itch even more. So Grihasthas, the hands are opened. It's no, but still there are these other things. Then even the Vanaprasth is, the person is becoming older, and because of all the training he has, the desire automatically reduces and goes off. And then finally, a sannyasi is someone whose hands are cut off. So there's no question of scratching the itch at all. And Maharaja said, doesn't matter in which ashram. You could be in the sannyas state of mind. So even if there's a grasti, he could have a sannyasi consciousness where it comes to this. So that was the thing I wanted to share. Thank you.
Very nice example. Very good. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone. It's a sensitive but important subject matter, a practical subject matter which we can all follow if we are serious about following spiritual life. Because we are all plagued by this agitation, and especially in this age where our senses are constantly bombarded by so many ads, by so many posters, by so many this, by so many that. right? So, reading about this, hearing about this, it kind of, further stresses the importance of the subject matter so that we can progress, we can take care and we can progress nicely in spiritual life.
Hare Krishna, Madhupati Prabhu, can I just take a minute?
Okay.
Just to, yes, we grew up with those sanskaras and we know the difference, but my main concern as a parent is because there's constant intermingling in this country, with the kids, how to, you can be a good role model, you can bring them to the temple, but there's no surety of what they are going to do, like the kids, to how to pass this on to the kids, because I am I have faith in Krishna, but at the same time, this fear is there. I don't know what wrong they might do. And like this concern, in this sense only, what we are discussing, they might take a wrong step because there's constant exposure, there's constant intermingling, things are happening around them in school, and they go to colleges, and the media, everything is affecting, so yes, Krishna consciousness is definitely helping them, but how to avoid, they might, even if they are kids, devotee kids, who knows that they can be carried away and take a wrong step. So you can answer that whenever you have time. I know everybody's in a rush right now, so just a concern and some steps, and also if other devotees have the same concern. Is it only me or other devotees living, here have the same concern? I know things are worse in India, but still, I just wanted to share that.
I can understand. I think that everybody would have that concern. And it's a deep, but at the same time, it's a deep subject matter. Srila Prabhupada constantly stressed on it. That's why this formation of Gurukul was there, where a child is trained from the very beginning about Gurukul. Now, we growing up in this academic environment where, we want schools for our children and coexisting schools, right? What's called coexist? What is the right word for that? When boys and girls go together.
Co-ed
school, yeah, co-education school, yeah. So, what does that give rise to? It will give rise to inflammation of the agitation. So, this tolerance is not taught, but yes, but we can discuss further on that subject matter, Mataji, some other time, probably on a Friday, Bhagavad Gita.
Sure, Prabhuji, no problem. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Alrighty, thank you very much. We'd like to wish you all a safe and Krishna conscious day ahead. We'd like to offer our prayers to the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Narsingho,
Jai Narsingha, Jai Narsingha, Jai Radesha, Jai Padma Padma
Ugraviram
Vishnu Jalantam
Darshan Bhagwan ki
Jai.
Jai.
Request of all the Vaishnavas, Mancha Kalpatarvasya
Namo Namah.
Vaishnavinda ki
Jai.
Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.
Jai.
Ila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hare Hare. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna,
Thank you.
everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hari
Thank
Om.
you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.